Chapter 4, Section 3 of Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. Onward the buccaneers drove themselves toward Panama. They had eaten leather and bitter jungle roots, rodents and snakes and monkeys. Their cheeks were shallow cups under their cheekbones. Their eyes glittered with fever. Now that their enthusiasm was gone, they were dragged onward by the knowledge of their captain's infallibility. Morgan could not fail because he never had failed. Surely he had a plan which would put gold of the New World in their pockets. And the word gold, though it had lost its meaning of reality, was more important than the word hunger. On the 8th morning, a scout came to Captain Morgan. "The way is blocked, sir. They have thrown up a little earthwork in front of us and mounted cannons." At a command, the head of the wriggling column swung to the left and began to gnaw its way through thicker underbrush. In the evening, they came to the top of a small round hill, and there below them was Panama, laved in the golden light of the western sun. Each man searched his neighbor's face to be assured that this was not his own personal hallucination. One pirate moved to the hill's edge. He stopped still and shouted crazily, and then his companion saw him running down the hill, dragging at his sword as he ran. A herd of cattle was feeding in the hollow below them, left there by some blundering Spaniard. In a moment, the whole 1,400 men were stampeding down the hill. They killed the cows with their swords. They lunged and slashed at the frightened animals. Soon, very soon, the blood was dripping down the beards of the famished men, the red drops falling on their shirts. During that night, they gorged themselves into unconsciousness. While the dark was down, the pirate scouts were ranging over the plain like werewolves. They slipped to the walls and counted the soldiers before the town. And early in the morning, Captain Morgan aroused his men and called them together to give them the orders for the day's fight. Henry Morgan had come to know the buccaneering soul. He lifted out the brains of his men and molded them for battle. He spoke to their fears. "It is 9 days' journey back to the river mouth where the ships lie. 9 days and no food at all. You could not get to the ships even if you wanted to run away. And here is Panama. While you were sleeping like hogs, the scouts were busy. Before this city, 4,000 soldiers are drawn up with wings of cavalry. These are not countrymen with guns and knives, but drilled soldiers in red coats. This is not all. There are bulls to be loosed against you cattle hunters." A laugh followed his last words. Many of these men had lived in the jungle and had made their livelihood with hunting wild cattle. The captain rubbed their avarice. "Gold and jewels past hope of counting are in the city. Every man of you will be rich if we succeed." Their hunger. Think of the roasted meats, the barrels of wine in the cellars, the spiced puddings. Imagine them. Their lust. Women slaves there are in the city, and thousands of other women, God knows. Your difficulty will be only in judging which to choose from the multitude that will fall to us. These are not grubby field women, but great ladies who lie in silken beds. How will your skins feel in beds like those, do you suppose? And last, because he knew them very well, he raised the standard of their vanity. The names of those who take part in this fight will climb the stairs of history. This is no pillage, but glorious war. Imagine to yourselves the people of Tortuga pointing to you and saying, "That man was in the fight at Panama. That man is a hero and rich." Think how the women of Goave will run after you when you go home again. There is that cup of gold before you. Will you run away? Many will die in the field today, but those who remain will carry golden Panama home in their pockets. A hoarse cheer arose. The French kissed their hands to Henry Morgan. The Caribs chattered and rolled their eyes. The gourmand Zerovers looked dully at the white city. "One thing more," said the captain. "The troops will be drawn up in a line if I know these Spanish captains. They like to make as great a show as possible. Your orders are to fire at their center, all of you, and when that center is weakened, then charge and split them." They mowed out on the plain, a dense cloud of men. 200 marksmen walked in advance, while the rest were grouped behind. Now Don Juan, the governor of Panama, stood with his neat army, a long line of foot soldiers in companies of 2 files. He looked at the rough formation of the enemy with contempt. Almost gaily, he signaled for the first advance. The Spanish cavalry swung out, wheeling and whirling across the plain. Now they formed a V, and now a hollow square. Moving at a fast trot, they went through all the intricate evolutions of a review. They made triangles, T's. In one moment, every sword glanced in the sunlight, then was made to disappear by twisting wrists, and then to flash again. Don Juan groaned with admiration. "Look at them, my friends. Look at Rodriguez, my beloved captain. Ah, Rodriguez, is it really I who have taught you these things? Can it be that this is the Rodriguez I held in my arms a little time ago? He was a baby then, but now he is a man and a hero. See the line, the sureness, the precision. See Rodriguez with his troop, my friends. How may these beasts of buccaneers overcome horsemen like mine?" Rodriguez, at the head of his troop, seemed to hear the governor's praise. His shoulders stiffened. He rose in his stirrups and gave the signal for the charge. The bugles sang excitedly. The hooves roared with a hollow rolling sound over the turf. Their coming was like a red wave with a silver crest. Rodriguez turned in his saddle and looked proudly at the hurtling troop behind him, following his orders as though they were the multi-members of one great body governed by his brain. Every saber was lined along a horse's neck. Rodriguez turned again to look once more at his lovely Panama before the shock, and then the whole troop rode headlong into a marsh. They knew it was there, but in the enthusiasm of the moment and the excitement of their figures, they had forgotten about it. In a second, the horse of Panama was a broken jumble of men and fallen beasts. They were flies, caught in a green flypaper. Don Juan looked dazedly at the pile of writhing, mangled bodies out on the plain, and then he burst into sobs like a child who has seen his bright toy broken in the road. The governor did not know what to do. His brain was heavy with a red sorrow. He turned about and started plodding homeward. He would go and hear a mass in the cathedral, he thought. The Spanish staff had grown frantic. Red and gold uniforms were rushing about in every direction. Every officer shouted commands at the top of his voice. The young lieutenant who had brought up the kettle finally made himself heard. "Turn loose the bulls," he cried over and over, until the others were shouting it also. The Indians who held the bulls tore out the nose rings and began prodding the great beasts forward with their goads. Slowly the herd moved out across the plain. Then a red monster broke into a slow run, and immediately the whole band was running. "They will trample these robbers into the grass," said a Spanish officer wisely. "Where they pass we shall find buttons, pieces of weapons, nothing more on the bloody ground." The bulls galloped slowly toward the rough line of the buccaneers. Suddenly the 200 marksmen knelt and fired quickly, like men hunting game. A kicking, bellowing wall seemed to rise up in the path of the running animals. Those of the herd that were not crippled halted in their tracks, sniffed the blood, milled, and then stampeded in terror back on the Spanish ranks. The officer was right. Where they passed, nothing remained except buttons and broken weapons and bloody turf. In the horror of the stampede, the buccaneers had charged. Now they dashed into the hole the bulls had made and drove the split defenders left and right. There were a few war cries, but these were Continental soldiers. They could not understand this kind of fighting. These terrible vagrants laughed and killed men with both of their hands. The men of Spain held ground for a little while, but then their hearts broke under the fine red coats, and they ran away to hide in the jungle. Little knots of buccaneers pursued them, spitting those who fell exhausted. Soon the defending troops were scattered. Some of them climbed into the trees and hid themselves among the leaves. Some lost themselves in the mountains and were never found. The cup of gold lay helpless before Henry Morgan. A crowd of shouting men poured through the undefended gate and up the broad street. At crossing alleys, part of the line changed its course like a river flowing backwards into its tributaries. Now and then a party would detach itself from the main body and move on one of the imposing houses. There would be kicks on the door, a rush, and the door would fold inward like the cover of an enormous book. The men would crowd through the entrance, cries and a scream or two. An old woman leaned from a window and looked with curiosity at the invaders. Then disappointment showed in her face. "Hi!" she screamed to a window across the way. "Look at this, will you? These thieves look very much like our own Spaniards. They're not devils at all, but only men." She seemed to resent their humanity. She withdrew her head as though she renounced them for being only men. In the afternoon, a fire broke out. Tall flames lanced into the sky. A section caught. A street. Half the city was burning. Henry Morgan went to the palace of the governor to establish his quarters, and there in the doorway stood Don Juan Perez de Guzman, with a naked rapier in his hand. "I am the governor," he said brokenly. "My people look to me to defend them against this scourge. I have failed, but perhaps I can manage to kill you." Henry Morgan looked at the ground. Something about this hysterical man unnerved him. "I did not set the fire," he said. "Some of your own slaves did that out of revenge, I think." Don Juan moved forward with his drawn rapier. "Defend yourself," he cried. Captain Morgan did not change his position. The sword dropped from the governor's hand. "I am a coward," he cried. "Why did I not strike without speaking? Why did you not oppose me? Oh, I'm a coward. I waited too long. I should never have spoken at all, but driven my point into your throat. I wanted to die a moment ago, to die as a kind of atonement for my failure, and to take you with me as a peace offering to my conscience. Panama is gone, and I should be gone too. It is as though a finger continued to live after the body has died. But I cannot die now. I haven't the courage, and I cannot kill you. I realize how I pretended. If I had only acted quickly, if I had not spoken." He walked away toward the gate and the open country. Henry Morgan watched him drunkenly lurching out of the city. The black night came. Nearly all of the city was in flame, a garden of red fire. The tower of the cathedral crashed down and threw a heaven of sparks into the air. Panama was dying in a bed of flame, and the buccaneers were murdering the people in the streets. All night the captain sat in the audience chamber while his men brought in the gathered plunder. They piled golden bars on the floor like cordwood, bars so heavy that 2 men carried each of them with difficulty. There were little stacks of jewels like glittering haycocks, and in a corner the precious vestments of the church were heaped, the stock of a heavenly old clothes market. Henry Morgan sat in a tall chair, carved in the likeness of many serpents. "Have you found La Santa Roja?" "No, sir. The women of the town are more like devils." Prisoners were brought in to be put to the torture with a thumbscrew taken from the Spanish prison. "Kneel." "Your wealth?" "Silence." "Turn, Joe. Mercy, mercy. I will lead you. I swear it. A cistern near my house. Another. Kneel. Your wealth? Turn, Joe. I will lead you. As regular, ruthless, and unfeeling they were as master slaughterers in a cow pen. Have you found La Santa Roja? I will hang all of you if she is harmed. No one has seen her, sir. The men, except a few, are drunk all through the night, with each confession of wealth concealed. The victim was led out by a party of searchers, and soon they would return bearing cups and silver plates, jewels, and clothing of colored silk. The glowing treasure in the hall of audience was becoming one enormous heap. And Captain Morgan wearily, Have you found the Red Saint? We have not found her, sir, but we are seeking and inquiring over the whole city, perhaps in the daylight, sir. Where is Curdigris? I think he's drunk, sir, but... He looked away from Henry Morgan. But what? What do you mean? The captain cried. Nothing. I mean nothing at all, sir. It is almost certain that he is drunk. Only it takes such gallons of wine to make him drunk, and perhaps he has found a friend in the meantime. Did you see him with anyone? Yes, sir. I saw him with a woman, and she was drunk. I could swear that Curdigris was drunk too. Did you think the woman might have been La Santa Roja? Oh, no, sir. I am sure it was not she. Only one of the women of the town, sir. There was a clash of golden service thrown on the pile. End of Chapter 4, Section 3. Chapter 4, Section 4 of Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. A yellow dawn crept out of the little painted hills of Panama and grew bolder as it edged across the plain. The sun flashed up from behind a peak, and its golden rays sought for their city. But Panama had died, had felt the quick decay of fire in one red night. But then, as the sun is a fickle sphere, the seeking beams found joy in the new thing. They lighted on the poor ruins, peered into upturned dead faces, raced along the cluttered streets, fell headlong into broken patios. They came to the white palace of the governor, leaped through the windows of the audience chamber, and fingered the golden heap on the floor. Henry Morgan was asleep in the serpent chair. His purple coat was draggled with the mud of the plain. The gray-clad rapier lay on the floor beside him. He was alone in this room, for all the men who had helped to pick the city's bones during the night had gone away to drink and to sleep. It was a high, long room walled with panels of polished cedar. The beams of the ceiling were as black and heavy as old iron. It had been a court of justice, a place of wedding feasts, the hall where ambassadors were toasted or murdered. One door opened on the street, the other, a broad arched opening, led into a lovely garden about which the palace lay curled. In the middle of the garden, a little marble whale spouted its steady stream into a pool. There were giant plants in red-glazed pots, plants with purple leaves and flowers whose petals bore arrowheads or hearts or squares in cardinal. There were shrubs lined with harsh tracery in the mad colors of the jungle. A monkey, no larger than a rabbit, picked over the gravel of the path, looking for seeds. On one of the stone seats of the garden, a woman was sitting. She pulled a yellow flower to bits while she sang fragments of a tender, silly song. I would pluck the flower of the day for you, my love, where it grows in the dawning. Her eyes were black, but opaque. They were the rich, sheening, shallow black of a dead fly's wings, and under the lids there were sharp little lines. She could draw up the underlids of her eyes so that they shone with laughter, though her mouth remained harsh and placid. Her skin was very pale, her hair straight and black as obsidian. Now she looked at the sun's inquisitive light, and now at the arched doorway of the hall of audience. Her singing stopped. She listened intently a moment, then started the gentle song again. There was no other sound save the distant cracklings of the fire, which still burned among the palm slave huts on the outskirts of the city. The little monkey came at a funny, crooked gallop along the path. He stopped in front of the woman and raised his black paws above his head as though in prayer. The woman spoke softly to him. "You have learned your lesson well, Chico. Your teacher was a Castilian with a fearful mustache. I am well acquainted with him. Do you know, Chico, he wants what he considers my honor. He will not be satisfied until he has added my honor to his own, and then he will be almost boastful. You have no idea of the size and weight of his honor, even as it is, but you would be satisfied with a nut, wouldn't you, Chico?" She dropped a piece of her flower to the tiny beast, whereupon he seized it, put it in his mouth, and spat in disgust. "Chico, Chico, you forget your teacher. That is all wrong. You will get no woman's honor by it. Place the flower over your heart, kiss my hand with a loud snapping sound, and then stride off like a fierce sheep out searching for wolves." She laughed and glanced again toward the doorway. Although there was no sound, she rose and walked quickly toward the hall of audience. Henry Morgan had turned slightly in his chair, and his turning allowed the sunlight to beat upon his eyelids. Suddenly, he sat up and stared about him. He looked with satisfaction at the heap of treasure on the floor, then gazed full in the eyes of the woman standing under the broad arch. "And have you ruined our poor city enough for your satisfaction?" she asked. "I did not burn the city," Henry said quickly. "Some of your Spanish slaves set the torch." The words had been forced from him. He remembered that he was surprised. "Who are you?" he demanded. She moved a step into the hall. "My name is Isobel. It was said that you sought me." "Sought you?" "Yes. I have been called La Santa Roja by certain young idiots," she said. "You, the Red Saint?" He had prepared a picture in his mind, a picture of a young girl with blue seraphic eyes that would fall before the steady stare of a mouse. These eyes did not fall. Under their soft black surfaces, they seemed to be laughing at him, making light of him. This woman's face was sharp, almost hawk-like. She was beautiful, truly, but hers was the harsh, dangerous beauty of lightning, and her skin was white, not pink at all. "You are the Red Saint?" He was not prepared for this change of idea. He was staggered at such a revolt against his preconceptions. But, said his mind, 1,200 men and more had broken their way through the jungle, had dashed on the city like a brutal wave. Hundreds of humans had died in the agony of wounds. Hundreds were crippled. The cup of gold was a ruin, and all these things had been done that Henry Morgan might take La Santa Roja. With all this preparation, it must be certain that he loved her. He would not have come if he had not loved her. Whatever the shock of her appearance, he could not circumvent the logic that he loved her. It must be so. Always he had thought of the saint in her name, and now he perceived the reason for the adjective. But a queer feeling was seeping in on him, no logical feeling at all. He remembered such sensations from a time long gone. He was drawn, yet repelled by this woman, and he felt her power to embarrass him. Morgan closed his eyes, and the figure of a slender little girl with golden hair stood in the darkness of his brain. "You're like Elizabeth," he said in the dull monotone of one dreaming. "You are like, and yet there is no likeness. Perhaps you master the power she was just learning to handle. I think I love you, but I do not know. I'm not sure." His eyes had been half closed, and when he opened them, there was a real woman before him, not the wraith-like Elizabeth, and she was gazing at him with curiosity, and perhaps, he thought, with some affection. It was queer that she had come to him when no one had forced her to come. She must be fascinated. He reached into his memory for the speeches he had built on his way across the isthmus. "You must marry me, Elizabeth, Isabel. I think I love you, Isabel. You must come away with me and live with me and be my wife under the protection of my name and my hand." "But I am already married," she interposed. "Quite satisfactorily married." He had even foreseen this. During the nights of the march, he had planned this campaign as careful as he might have planned a battle. But is it right that two, meeting in flaming white fire, should go apart for stark eternity, should trudge off into bleak infinity, that each of these two should bear black embers of a flame that has not burned itself to death? Is there anything under heaven to forbid us this burning? Heaven has given the deathless oil. Each of us carries a little torch for the other. Ah, Isabel, deny it, or shrink from the intruding knowledge, if you will. You would vibrate to my touch, like the fine body of an old violin. You are afraid, I think. There is in your mind a burling apprehension of the world, the prying world, the spiteful world. But do you not be fearsome, for I say to you that this world is a blind, doddering worm, knowing three passions only: jealousy, curiosity, and hate. It is easy to defeat the worm, so only you make the heart a universe to itself. The worm, having no heart, cannot conceive the workings of a heart. He lies confounded by the stars of this new system. Why do I tell you these things, Isabel? Knowing you will understand them, you must understand them. Perhaps I know by the dark, sweet music of your eyes. Perhaps I can read the throbbing heartbeats on your lips. Your beating heart is a little drum urging me to battle with your fears. Your lips are like twin petals of a red hibiscus. And if I find you lovely, am I to be put in fear by a dull circumstance? May I not speak my thought to you, whom it most concerns next to myself? Do not let us go apart bearing black embers of a flame that has not burned itself to death. When he had started to speak, she listened carefully to his words, and then a little pain had flitted across her face. But when he had done, there was only amusement in her eyes. That and the lurking ridicule under their surfaces. Isabel laughed softly. "You forget only one thing, sir," she said. "I do not burn. I wonder if I shall ever burn again. You do not carry a torch for me, and I hoped you did. I came this morning to see if you did. And I have heard your words so often in Paris and Cordova. I'm tired of these words that never change. Is there some book with which aspiring lovers instruct themselves? The Spanish men say the same things, but their gestures are more practiced, and so a little more convincing. You have much to learn." She was silent. Henry looked at the floor. His amazement had raised a fog of dullness in his brain. "I took Panama for you," he said plaintively. "Ah, yesterday I hoped you did. Yesterday I dreamed you had. But today, I'm sorry." She spoke softly and very sadly. "When I heard of you and your blustering up and down the ocean, I thought of you somehow as the one realist on an earth of vacillation. I dreamed that you would come to me one day, armed with a transcendent silent lust, and force my body with brutality. I craved a wordless, reasonless brutality. The long thought of it bore me up when I was paraded by my husband. He did not love me. He was flattered with the thought that I loved him. It gave him importance and charm in his own eyes, neither of which were his. He would take me through the streets, and his eyes would say, 'See what I have married?' No ordinary man could marry such a woman. But then, I am not an ordinary man. He was afraid of me, a little man, and afraid of me. He would say, 'With your permission, my dear, I shall exercise the prerogative of a husband.' The contempt I have for him. I wanted force, blind, unreasoning force, and love not for my soul or for some imagined beauty of my mind, but for the white fetish of my body. I do not want softness. I am soft. My husband uses scented lotions on his hands before he touches me, and his fingers are like thick, damp snails. I want the crush of hard muscles, the delicious pain of little hurts. She searched his face closely, as though looking once more for a quality which had been lost. I thought richly of you once. You grew to be a brazen figure of the night, and now I find you a babbler, a speaker of sweet considered words, and rather clumsy about it. I find you are no realist at all, but a bungling romancer. You want to marry me, to protect me. All men save one have wanted to protect me. In every way I am more able to protect myself than you are. From the morning of my first memory I have been made sick with phrases. I have been dressed in epithets and fed endearments. These other men, like you, would not say what they wanted. They, like you, felt it necessary to justify their passion in their own eyes. They, like you, must convince themselves, as well as me, that they loved me. Henry Morgan had sunk his head, seemingly in shame. Now he started towards her. "But I will force you then," he cried. "It is too late. I would perforce think of you standing there, declaiming your considered words. While you wrenched at my clothing, I would picture you fawning before me, blurting out your words. And I should laugh, I'm afraid. I might even protect myself. And you, who should be somewhat in authority on rape, must know the consequence of that. No, you have failed, and I am sorry of your failure." "I love you," he said miserably. "You speak as though it were some new tremendous thing. Many men have loved me. Hundreds have said they did. But what are you going to do with me, Captain Morgan? My husband is in Peru, and my inheritance is there also. I do not know. But am I to be a slave, a prisoner? Yes, I must take you away with me. The men would laugh at me else. It would ruin discipline." "If I must be a slave," she said, "if I must go away from my own country, I hope I shall be your slave, yours or the property of a charming young buccaneer I met last night. But I do not think you will take me, Captain Morgan. No, I do not think you will force me to go, for I will, perhaps, twist the knife I have already in your breast." Henry Morgan was aroused. "Who was this young buccaneer?" he asked crossly. "Ah, you perceive the knife," said Isobel. "And how do I know the fellow? But he was charming, and I should like to see him again." The captain's eyes were flaming with rage. "You will be locked up," he said harshly. "You will remain in a cell until the time when we go again to Chagres, and we shall see whether this knife you speak of is sharp enough to keep you here in Panama." As she followed him across the garden to her jail, her clear laughter rang out. "Captain Morgan, it has just occurred to me. I have begun to see that a great many different kinds of men make the same kind of husband." "Get to your cell," he ordered her. "Oh, and, Captain Morgan, you will find an old woman on the steps of the palace. My duenna, she is. Send her to me, please. And now, goodbye for the time, sir. I must get to my devotions. The sin to be dissolved, Captain Morgan, is truthfulness. It is a bad thing for the soul, truthfulness." He went slowly back to his chair in the hall of audience. He was filled with a kind of shame for his manhood. It was as though she had plucked his rapier from its scabbard and scratched his face with it while he stood helpless before her. She had beaten him without apparent effort. Now he quailed before the knowledge of his men's laughter when they discovered his embarrassment. There would be snickering when his back was turned. Groups of pirates would be silent as he passed, and when he had gone, they would break into sharp laughter. This hidden ridicule was terrifying to Henry Morgan. His hates began to raise their heads. Hatreds not for Isabel, but for his own men who would laugh at him, for the people of Tortuga who would tell the story in the taverns, for the whole Indian coast. Now from the little prison across the garden came a shrill voice praying to the Virgin. The penetrating sound charged the whole palace with a fervent cacophony. Henry Morgan listened with shame-sharpened ears for mockery in the words or in the tone, but there was no mockery. Over and over, a shrill Ave Maria, the tone of a fearful, pleading sinner. Ora pro nobis, a shattered world and the black skeleton of a golden city. Ora pro nobis. No mockery at all, but broken-hearted repentance reading its poor testimony on the dropping beads. A shrill woman's voice, piercing, insistent. It seemed to be digging at a tremendous, hopeless sin. She had said it was the sin of truthfulness. I have been honest in my being, and that is a black lie on the soul. Forgive my body its humanity. Forgive my mind which knows its limitations. Pardon my soul for being anchored this little time to both. Ora pro nobis. The mad, endless rosary cankered in Henry's brain. At last he seized his rapier and his hat and ran from the hall into the street. Behind him the treasure lay smiling under the slanting sun. The streets about the governor's palace had not been touched by the fire. Captain Morgan walked along the paved way until he came to the ways of ruin. Here blackened walls had spilled their stones into the road. Those houses which had been made of cedar were vanished into the frames of smoking ashes, which marked their places. Here and there lay murdered citizens, grinning their last agony into the sky. Their faces will be black before the night, Henry thought. I must have them removed or the sickness will come. Dallying clouds of smoke still arose from the city, filling the air with the sickly odor of damp things burning. The green hills beyond the plain seemed incredible to Henry Morgan. He regarded them closely and then looked back at the city. This destruction, which had seemed so complete, so awful during the night, was, after all, a pitiful, small, and circumscribed destruction. Henry had not thought of the hills remaining green and standing. This conquest, then, was more or less unimportant. Yes, the city was in ruins. He had destroyed the city, but the woman who had drawn him to the cup of gold eluded him. She escaped while she still lay in his power. Henry winced at his impotence and shuddered that other people should know it. A few buccaneers were poking about in the ashes looking for melted plate which might have escaped the search of the night before. Turning a corner, Henry came upon the little Cockney Jones and saw him quickly thrust something into his pocket. A flame of rage arose in Captain Morgan. Curtigree had said that there was no difference between this epileptic dwarf and Henry Morgan. No difference indeed. This man was a thief. The rage changed to a fearful lust to hurt the little man, to outrage him, to hold him up to scorn as Henry Morgan had been scorned. The cruel desire made the captain's lips grow thin and white. What have you in your pocket? Nothing. Nothing, sir. Let me see what you have in your pocket. The captain was pointing a heavy pistol. It's nothing, sir, only a little crucifix. I found it. He drew out a golden cross studded with diamonds, and on it a Christ of ivory. You see, it's from my wife, the Cockney explained. Ah, for your Spanish wife. She's half Negro, sir. You know the penalty for concealing spoil. Jones looked at the pistol, and his face grayed. You would not. Oh, sir, you would not, he began chokingly. Then he seemed to be clutched by invisible, huge fingers. His arms dropped stiffly to his sides, his lips sagged open, and a dull imbecilic light came into his eyes. There was a little foam on his lips. His whole body twitched like a wooden dancing figure on a string. Captain Morgan fired. For a moment the Cockney seemed to grow smaller. His shoulders drew in until they nearly covered his chest. I short wings. His hands clenched, and then the whole contracted mass fell to the ground, convulsing like a thick, animate jelly. His lips drew back from his teeth in a last idiot snarl. Henry Morgan stirred the body with his foot, and a change stirred in his mind. He had killed this man. It was his right to kill, to burn, to plunder, not because he was ethical, nor even because he was clever, but because he was strong. Henry Morgan was the master of Panama and all its people. There was no will in Panama save Henry Morgan's will. He could slaughter every human in the country if he so chose. All this was true. No one would deny it. But in the palace back there was a woman who held his power and his will in contempt, and her contempt was a stronger weapon than his will. She fenced at his embarrassment and touched him at her convenience. But how could that be? He argued. No one was master in Panama but himself, and he had just killed a man to prove it. Under the battering of his arguments, the power of Isabel waned and slowly disappeared. He would go back to the palace. He would force her as he had promised. This woman had been treated with too much consideration. She did not realize the significance of slavery, nor did she know the iron of Henry Morgan. He turned about and walked back toward the palace. In the hall of audience, he threw off his pistols, but the gray rapier remained at his side. Isabel was kneeling before a holy picture in her little whitewashed cell when Henry Morgan burst upon her. The dry duenna shrank into a corner at the sight of him, but Isabel regarded him intently, noted his flushed face, his half-closed fierce eyes. She heard his heavy breathing, and with a smile of comprehension rose to her feet. Her laughter rang banteringly as she drew a pin from her bodice and assumed the position of a fencer, 1 foot forward, her left arm held behind her for balance, the pin pointed before her like a foil. "En garde!" she cried, and the captain rushed at her. His arms encircled her shoulders, and his hands were tearing at her clothing. Isabel stood quite still, but one hand darted about with its pin, striking like a small white serpent. Little spots of blood appeared on Henry's cheeks, on his throat. "Your eyes next, Captain," she said quietly, and stabbed him thrice on the cheekbone. Henry released her and stepped away, wiping his bloody face with the back of his hand. Isabel laughed at him. A man may beat, may subject to every violation, a woman who cries and runs away, but he is helpless before one who stands her ground and only laughs. "I heard a shot," she said. "I thought perhaps you had killed someone to justify your manhood, but your manhood will suffer now, will it not? Word of this encounter will get about somehow. You know how such things travel. It will be told that you were beaten with a pin in the hands of a woman." Her tone was gloating and cruel. Henry's hand slipped to his side, and the lean rapier crept from its sheath like a frozen serpent. The light flicked viciously along its lank blade. At last the needlepoint came out, and the steel turned and pointed at the woman's breast. Isabel grew sick with terror. "I'm a sinner," she said. Then a dawning relief came into her face. She motioned the aged duenna to her and spoke in rapid, clattering Spanish. "It is true," said the old woman. "It is true." At the end of her speaking, Isabel thriftily drew aside the webby lace of her mantilla, that it might not be spotted with blood. The duenna began interpreting. "Sir, my mistress says that a true Catholic who dies at the hand of an infidel goes to heaven. This is true. Further, she says that a Catholic woman who dies protecting her holy marriage vow goes straightway to heaven. This is also true. Lastly, she thinks that such a woman might, in course of time, be canonized. Such things have happened. Sir, Captain, be kind. Permit me to kiss her hand now before you strike. What grace to have kissed the hand of a living saint." It may do much for my own sinful soul." Isobel spoke to her again. "My mistress bids you strike. More, she urges it, pleads for the blow. The angels are hovering about her head. She sees the great light and the holy music is sounding in her ears." The rapier point lowered. Henry Morgan turned away and gazed out into the sunlit garden. Little Chico came galloping along the path and sat down in the open doorway. The little beast clapped his paws, raised them above his head as though in prayer. The lean rapier made a sharp swishing sound as it drove into its scabbard, and Captain Morgan stooped to pick up the tiny monkey. He walked away, stroking Chico's head with his forefinger. End of Chapter 4, Section 4. Chapter 4, Section 5 of Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. Henry Morgan lifted a golden cup from the heap of loot. It was a lovely, slender chalice with long, curved handles and a rim of silver. Around its outer edge, 4 grotesque lambs chased each other, and inside, on the bottom, a naked girl lifted her arms in sensual ecstasy. The captain turned the cup in his hands. Then suddenly he hurled it at a little fiery pyramid of diamonds. The stones scattered from their neat pile with a dry, rustling sound. Henry Morgan turned and went back to his serpent chair. He was thinking of the little Cockney Jones, thinking of the cold hand of epilepsy which had seized him in his last moment of life. The hand had been always behind him, a giant hand to wring the man's body until the white drops of agony oozed from his lips. Henry wondered, now, why he had wanted to hurt the little man, to torture him, and finally to kill him. Jones had been shadowed through all his life by a sleepless tormentor. Of course, this murder had been caused by the words of Curtigree, who had said that Jones was like Henry Morgan. Yes, he knew it now, and he knew also a red shame for his trumped charge of thievery. Why could he not have killed the man without explanation? And Curtigree, where was he now? He had seen Isobel, that was fairly sure, and she had noticed him. Perhaps she loved Curtigree, with his bright hair and his curious way with women. And how could he keep this young man from knowing his defeat, from hearing the adventure of the pin and all the ignominy of Henry Morgan's dealings with La Santa Roja? The pistol which had killed Jones was lying on the floor. Henry picked it up and methodically went to load it. He did not fear ridicule from Curtigree, but rather sympathy and understanding. Henry did not want understanding now. His lieutenant would look at him with compassion and some pity, and there would be something superior about the pity, something faintly ironic. It would be the pity of a young, handsome man who condones the amorous failure of one not so handsome. And then, Curtigree was something like a woman for knowing things, something like Isobel. He gathered information with a mysterious hidden eye. And the Red Saint. Henry must take her away with him, of course. He could do nothing else. Perhaps after a long time she would fall in love with him, but not, surely, because of merits in himself. Her contempt had convinced him that he had no merits, that he was a monstrous being set apart from other men by unmentionable ugliness. She had not said so much, but she had intimated it. No, he had not the qualities like to draw a woman to his side when there were other men about. But perhaps if she saw no other men, she might ignore the qualities so lacking in him. She might come at last to build on something he possessed. He thought of the last scene with her. Now that he was calm, his wild action seemed the showing off of a thick-legged little boy. But how could any man have done otherwise? She had beaten assault with laughter, sharp, cruel laughter, which took his motives out and made sport of them. He might have killed her, But what man could kill a woman who wanted to be killed, who begged to be killed? The thing was impossible. He rammed a bullet into the muzzle of his pistol. A draggled, unkempt figure came through the doorway. It was Curtigree, a red-eyed, mud-spattered Curtigree, with the blood of the battle still on his face. He looked at the heap of treasure. "We are rich," he said without enthusiasm. "Where have you been, Curtigree?" "Been? Why, I've been drunk. It is good to be drunk after fighting." He smiled wryly and licked his lips. "It is not so good to stop being drunk. That is like childbirth. Necessary, but unpleasant and unornamental. I wanted you by my side," said Henry Morgan. "You wanted me? I was informed that you wanted no one, that you were quite complete and happy in yourself, and so I got a little drunker. You see, sir, I did not want to remember your reason for being alone." He paused. "It was told me, sir, that the Red Saint is here." Curtigree laughed at his own ill-concealed emotion. He changed his manner with an effort of will. His tone became jocular. "Tell me the truth, sir. It is a small gift to a man to know what he has missed. Many people have no other gift during their whole lives. Tell me, sir, has the sweet enemy fallen? Has the castle of flesh capitulated? Does the standard of Morgan float over the pink tower?" Henry's face had flushed. The pistol in his hand rose quietly, steadied by an inexorable madness. There was a sharp crash and a white billow of smoke. Curtigree stood as he was. He seemed to be intently listening to some distant throbbing sound. Then a grimace of terror spread on his face. His fingers frantically explored his breast and followed a trickle of blood to its source. A small hole in his lung. The little finger edged into the hole. Curtigree smiled again. He was not afraid of certain things, now that he knew he was not frightened anymore. Captain Morgan stared stupidly at the pistol in his hand. He seemed surprised to discover it there, startled at its presence. Curtigree laughed hysterically. "My mother will hate you," he cried ruefully. "She will practice all her ancient curses upon you." "My mother," he choked over his breath. "Do not tell her. Make some gleaming lie. Build my poor life up to a golden minaret. Do not let it stop like a half-finished tower. But no, you need build only a foundation. If you give her that, she will continue the structure of heroic memory. She will make for me a tomb of white, inaccurate thoughts." His throat filled with blood. "Why did you do it, sir?" The captain looked up from his pistol. "Do it?" He saw the bloody lips, the torn breast. He started up from his chair and then fell back again. Misery was writing lines about his eyes. "I do not know," he said. "I must have known, but I've forgotten." Curtigree went slowly to his knees. He steadied himself with his knuckles on the floor. "It is my knees, sir. They will not bear me any more," he apologized. He seemed to be listening for the throbbing sound again. Suddenly, his voice rose in bitter complaint. "It is a legend that dying men think of their deeds done. No, I think of what I have not done, of what I might have done in the years that are dying with me. I think of the lips of women I have never seen, of the wine that is sleeping in a grapeseed, of the quick warm caress of my mother in Goave. But mostly I think that I shall never walk about again, never stroll in the sunshine nor smell the rich essences the full moon conjures up out of the earth. Sir, why did you do it?" Henry Morgan was staring at the pistol again. "I do not know," he muttered sullenly. "I must have known, but I've forgotten. I killed a dog once, and I have just killed Jones. I do not know why." "You are a great man, Captain," Curtigree said bitterly. "Great men may leave their reasons for the creative hands of their apologists. But why, sir, I am nothing any more, nothing. A moment ago I was an excellent swordsman, but now my being, that which fought and cursed and loved, it may never have been for all I know." His wrists weakened, and he fell to his side and lay there coughing at the obstruction in his throat. Then, for a time, there was no sound in the room save his uneven gasping for breath. But suddenly, he raised himself on one elbow and laughed at some cosmic joke, some jest of the great rolling spheres, laughed triumphantly as though he had solved a puzzle and found how simple it was. A wave of blood rode to his lips on the laughter and filled up his throat. The laugh became a gushing sigh, and Curtigree sank slowly to his side and was still, because his lungs would no longer force breath. Henry still stared at the pistol in his hand. Slowly he raised his eyes to the open window. The streaming rays of the sun made the treasure on the floor glow like a mass of hot metal. His eyes wandered to the body in front of him. He shuddered, and then he went to Curtigree, picked him up, and sat him in a chair. The limp body fell over to one side. Henry straightened it and braced it in an upright position. Then he went back to his serpent chair. "I raised my hand like this," he said, pointing the pistol at Curtigree. "I raised my hand like this. I must have. Curtigree is dead. Like this I raised it. Like this, and pointed. How did I do it?" He bowed his head, then raised it with a chuckle. "Curtigree," he said. "Curtigree, I wanted to tell you about La Santa Roja. She rides horses, you know. She has no womanly modesty at all, none at all, and her looks are only moderate." He peered at the propped figure before him. The eyes of Curtigree had been only half closed, but now the lids slipped down and the eyes began to sink back in his head. On his face was the frozen distortion of his last bitter laughter. "Curtigree," the captain shouted. He went quickly to the body and laid his hand on its forehead. "This is a dead thing," he said musingly. "This is only a dead thing. It will bring flies and the sickness. I must have it taken away at once. It will bring the flies into this room. Curtigree, we have been fooled. The woman fences like a man and she rides horses astride. So much labor lost for us. That's what we get for believing everything we hear, eh, Curtigree? But this is only a dead thing and the flies will come to it." He was interrupted by a tramp of feet on the stair. A band of his men entered, driving in their midst a poor frightened Spaniard, a mud-draggled, terrified Spaniard. The lace had been torn from his neck, and a little stream of blood ran from one sleeve. "Here's a Spaniard, sir," the leader said. "He came to the city bearing a white flag. Shall we respect the white flag, sir? He has silver on his saddle. Shall we kill him, sir? Perhaps he is a spy." Henry Morgan ignored the speech. Instead, he pointed to the body in the chair. "That is only a dead thing," he announced. "That is not Curtigree. I sent Curtigree away. He will be back soon, but that is—" I raised my hand like this, do you see? Like this. I know exactly how I did it. I have tried it again and again, but that is a dead thing. It will bring the flies to us," he cried. "Oh, take it away and bury it in the earth." A buccaneer moved to lift the body. "Don't touch him! Don't dare to touch him. Leave him where he is. He is smiling. Do you see him smile? But the flies. No, leave him. I will care for him myself." "The Spaniard, sir. What shall we do with him? Shall we kill him?" "What Spaniard?" "Why, this one before you, sir." He shoved the man forward. Henry seemed to awaken from a deep dream. "What do you want?" he asked harshly. The Spaniard struggled with his fright. It is my wish and the wish of my padrone to have speech with one Captain Morgan, if he will have the goodness. I am a messenger, senor, not a spy, as these gentlemen suggest." "What is your message?" Henry's voice had become wary. The messenger took reassurance from his changed tone. "I come from one man very rich, senor." "You have his wife?" "I have his wife." "She was taken in the city, senor." "Her name?" "She is the Doña Isabel Espinosa Valdez y los Gavilanes, senor. The simple people of the city have called her La Santa Roja." Henry Morgan regarded him for a long time. "Yes, I have her," he said finally. She is in a cell. What does her husband wish? He offers ransom, Signor. He has reason to wish his wife with him again. What ransom does he offer? What would your excellency suggest? 20,000 pieces of 8, Henry said quickly. The messenger was staggered. 20,000? 20,000? He translated fully to comprehend the enormity of the amount. I perceive that your excellency also wants the woman. Henry Morgan looked at the body of Coeur de Gris. No, he said, I want the money. Now the messenger was relieved. He had been prepared to think this great man a great idiot. I will do what may be done, Signor. I will come back to you in 4 days. In 3. But if I do not arrive, Signor? If you do not arrive, I shall take the Red Saint away with me and sell her in the slave docks. I shall strive, Signor. Give him courtesy, the captain commanded. Do not mistreat him in any way. He is to bring us gold. As they were leaving, one man turned back and let his eyes lovingly caress the treasure. When is the division to be, sir? In Chagres, fool. Do you think I would divide it now? But, sir, we would like to be having a bit of it in our hands for the feel of it, sir. We have fought hard, sir. Get out. You'll have none of it in your hands until we come to the ships again. Do you think I want you throwing it to the women here? Let the Goave women get it from you. The men went out of the hall of audience, grumbling a little. End of Chapter 4, Section 5.